So I'm so excited to be sitting with my sister Natasha. We share the same name, of course, so that's always a joy. But I'm gonna jump right into the conversation this morning and ask or tell us about a time when you experienced Black woman grief and how it informs how you do life today.
I feel like I experience Black woman grief all the time. I mean,
Mhm.
seriously, it's like, I mean, obviously you have the normal grief. I said the grief that's kind of common to humans, right? When you lose a loved one, and I've had plenty of those losses for sure. And that's the reality of things. But I think, when I think about our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health, if you will, our communal health, those additional things bring me grief. I was actually just writing, I just posted this week. I don't know when you're gonna release it, but I was just posting this week a lament about just being in the airport, and observing a situation that caused me, Black woman grief because it was certainly a racialized incident that the people participating in it weren't even realizing, the significance and the magnitude of the message that they were sending, which actually going to end up causing them harm, but certainly was hurtful for me to observe and witness as well. And so I think there's just a heightened awareness I think that Black women have, particularly when we are attuned to the spirit and when we are people who work and fight for justice and we are communal people. And I think we have relationships too that are in different social economic in communities. Then there are things that we just pay attention to different than other people, and those things have an impact on how we live and what we do.
Yeah. And I actually saw your post and I had to join in with that lament. Wow.
Right.
Um, and so I want to move into I want to sit here for a minute just to kinda expand on that a little bit because
Mhm.
we, as Black women, we experience these things. Like you said, you can share
Mhm.
million stories, right? Because it's so prevalent. Black woman grief is so resurgent, like it comes at us all the time.
Right.
But what happens is that we don't, um most of the times it's minimized.
Yeah.
Like, if we were to bring it up, you know, um, or villainized.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
what do we do what do we do with that? Like, what do we do when we feel like we have to be silenced or have to silence that grief or the griefs that we experience as Black women?
Yeah, I mean, this one, this recent one I wrote about, it's a post of myself that called Mother to Son. So that one, to me, it was a very public act, so it required a public response, right? Right. So that was very easy. Um, there's another pretty traumatizing travel experience I had in the airport, a few months ago. And I had been wrestling about whether to share that. I will. I've decided that I'm going to, but it was a wrestle to share, because I think on some hand, um, I'm a pretty personal person, so I just don't feel like you follow me on social media, so I'm never the one just like putting all my business out in the street like that and letting people into my intimate spaces. I just don't. That's just not what I do. Um, but I also think that to your point about minimizing, when you sometimes share a story from a personal context, I think it could be a blessing in that, the Bible tells us they overcome through the blood of the Lamb and the power of testimony. So I do believe it's important to share testimonies. And not all testimonies are good, right? Some testimonies are just, this is the reality of the brokenness of this world. And yet we're still trusting God, and yet we still have faith in light of, right? And so I think those testimonies are also important. But I think the other danger sometimes in sharing a personal story, like the one I haven't shared yet, but I've gotten to a point that I'm going to, people just get it as isolated incident, right? Like, especially when you're a person of color or a Black person, particularly in this country, the presumption is guilt before innocence. And so, I was in a very, I ended up being in a very traumatizing situation. And so much of my defense was about all the things that I had done, right? Because those things were supposed to be a shield for me, right? And it wasn't, right? And this is another, again, incident in the airport. So I'll share about that, but I share about it because, even right now, Natasha, the conversation that we're having in our country, and the way that, we're both writers. So the way that we craft story, the way that we craft narrative, the way that we use language, the way that we define terms, all those things are critically important. And I just challenge people, your listeners, that when we're hearing conversations that are happening in a public square, that we are intentional and persistent in asking people to clarify and define their terms and to justify, like put some fact, research, and or multiple examples behind your claim, right? And I will submit that most people can't do that. Most people who are speaking so boldly and confidently in the public square, they can't do those things I just said. Like they don't have the foundation or the background, or have not read, right? The history, the policies. They don't know the testimonies and the stories. And so they're just regurgitating information that they've heard from other people. And that's
That is such a powerful point. It's such a powerful point because, to your point, most of the things that are coming up, especially like in the news across social media, is this commentary that is not supported by any type of facts. And as you put it, that is so very dangerous and harmful to other people. But I think we're living in this time where people don't care. Like they literally don't care, even though even in Christian spaces, and I say Christian, I'm really don't even like to use the term anymore. Like I'll say Christ followers instead because Christ followers are going to act like Christ.
Mhm.
But this, what we've been attaching the word Christian to is not has not been Christ-like. Um, what has really been stirring in culture right now.
right.
Um, but I want to move into because you display such powerful mentorship
Mhm.
and leadership in the Black community. And so, as a mentor and leader, you've seen firsthand how grief and lament impacts individuals. So, can you share like the impact that you are seeing in the world now versus kind of in the past in the Black community for the Black woman?
Yeah, I think I talk about this quite a bit, right? I think we're in an age now where we have language to name things that we did not always have language for. I mean, even in the last 5 years, we've gotten language to name things that we didn't have language for before. And so when I think about that historically, I think to a very significant degree, right? Those of us who are descendants of the transatlantic slave trade, those free Africans that were brought to the United States and then enslaved, they already experience a certain level of trauma, right? They experience a level of trauma in the Mid-Atlantic passage. And so you think about, women who literally we have stories of this, right? That decided to throw themselves overboard, or women who decided to kill their babies because they didn't want their babies, being enslaved, or people who starved themselves to death on the way because they just refused to be enslaved. And so again, for those who remain, they observed all those things, right? So that impacts people. If you have a dead body next to you and you chain to that dead body for the rest of the trip, like that impacts you. And so we've always been a traumatized people. I think that's very important to name. Now we can always have language for it, and, I think to a degree, when I think about the spiritual formation of Black people, we were able to cling to what the only thing we had, and what we had was, Jesus, and we had community, right? And so we had a people who, did not go to seminary, but cultivated a theology of, um, of liberation, right? They cultivate a theology of hope, a theology of God being with them in their suffering, a theology of joy in the morning, MOURN, right? And so we've always had that as a people. We've always had that, and that has sustained us across generation and throughout history. Um, And so Jesus has been enough, and community has been enough, and worship has been enough, and prayer has been enough, and hope has been enough to sustain us all these time. And so I think, to a large degree, when I think about our ancestors, that we don't want to be people who forget the basics.
Mm.
Because I think where we are is because we are more educated people in some ways, then we're grabbing for other things that we think is going to satisfy, that we are found out or temporal at best. They're not sustaining. And then we're still disillusioned and we're dismayed and we don't know what to do, right? And so I'm saying, yes, use the knowledge that we have because it is good for us. It's wisdom, and don't forget the knowledge that we have carried that has carried us across a long period of time. And so I think about that because I when I look at our young people in particular, I hear a lot of language and I have to but sometimes I have to push back on the language. I'm like, you know, um, everybody's not toxic, right? Just because you have a word now, that's a good word. Let's use it. And let's make sure we're using it in the right context. Everybody's not toxic. Some people you just might just be immature. Right? You just might be uninformed, you might be, ignorant, you might, not they might not have met your expectation, hey, but we can't, just automatically say, "Oh, well, they toxic," and then use that as a way to cancel somebody or cut them off or not continue and do the hard work of relationship building. Because you are married and I'm married, and if we every time we get in an argument with somebody, we just check out, then you're gonna be the only one left, and you're not gonna be standing. Right? And so we have to cultivate the spiritual disciplines and rhythms that Jesus has taught us, right? That we pray and then we offer forgiveness and we confess our sins one to another, right? We ask, and so those are, we love well. And so these are spiritual disciplines and rhythms that we practice in community in relationship with other people
Mhm.
who are also flawed people as we are. And so I think that's one of the things I challenge people with. Now that we have a new language, that doesn't absolve us from doing the work. It doesn't excuse us from for cultivating character
Wow.
and doing the work of accounting the cost of discipleship, right? It doesn't absolve us of those things just because we have a new language. And so I wanna say to people that having language or being able to name something is extremely important, and it is the first step of your healing journey. It is not the end.
Wow, that is so beautiful. And would you say, like, in as you've mentored and sponsored others, for one, just tell the listeners about the work that you're doing in this area, which is so powerful. Like I'm seeing you all over the place, and not just seeing you in the places. You're doing kingdom work, and it is like so beautiful and so inspiring to me. So please just share about what you're doing in this area now.
Yeah, I have, obviously, I've been mentoring all of my adult life, really, because I've been a beneficiary of mentoring. But the primary way I'm doing this work now is I have a nonprofit called Leadership Links Incorporated. So LINKS Links, or CAPS is stands for our 5 core values of love, inspiration, network, knowledge, and service. And what we do is we offer leadership education. We say that facilitates impact, living power, character, and spiritual development. So we're cultivating leaders holistically, and we're cultivating leaders holistically to go out into the workplace. So we're preparing them to lead. We're preparing them to be change makers. We're preparing them to be global agents. We're prepared to be community servants. And the targeted audience for our work is Black girls and young women. So we start that work at 6th grade all the way up to 12th grade for our girls program, and then our young women's program is for young women who are in the early stages or transitional stages of their careers. And so up until about age 30. And so we've been doing that work. Actually, this year we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary of incorporation. And so we're doing a lot of good work there. We have people involved in our programming from about 8 states for this year's program. And so we're based in North Carolina, but we have a national presence. And we're continuing to grow that work. And so we're very honored to do it. I was able to found this nonprofit with myself and 5 other Naval Academy graduates, and so, we're honored to, really pay it forward in this way.
Yes, absolutely. Just such a beautiful work, and
Mhm.
that and leaving such a beautiful legacy as well. Um, and just sewing into
Mhm.
the next and now generation is just so powerful.
Yeah.
And so when we look at grief and lament, it's often overlooked and undervalued in leadership spaces. And so when we're thinking about leadership
Yeah.
and you're doing mentoring and sponsorship in those areas, they are essential to human experience,
Mhm.
meaning grief and lament, right? How do
Absolutely.
you see those as integral parts of the kingdom of God?
Yeah.
And what role do they play in building the community that reflects God's heart?
Yeah, I think, one of the things I put forth, Natasha, really, when I think about cultivating leaders, let me be clear, because this again, with these some of these conversations that are happening with DEI and such, I don't work with incompetent people. Let's be clear about that. And the fact is, you know it, I know it. For most people of color that I know that are leading, we have been taught, trained, cultivated to say we have to be twice as good to get half as much, and that's at a bare minimum. And so most of the time, when we're showing up in a space, we are more credentialed, we are more qualified. So this is not a question of competence, right, or quality. And I think that's very important because even with that grind that we have become accustomed to as Black women. I'll speak from that context. I know that's what you're writing about as well. Even with that, my one of my responsibilities as a leader that I take very seriously is I try to remind our leaders who are Christian that they are the image bearers of God, that they are God's vessels, agents, representatives, ambassadors wherever they go. And they are witnesses for Christ wherever they go. And I say that too because other people who may or may not know Jesus are also created in the image of God. And so that's a way and responsibility and call for them to honor the image bearing in others as well. I think this is extremely important because one thing I say about leadership, our being must come before our doing. And so I do a lot, right? But my doing is a overflow because I'm clear about who I am. I'm clear about my purpose and my call, right? And so I'm responding out of that. That's different than someone performing because they want a title, because they want more money, because they want the approval of people, because they want likes and following, right? Which is why I don't do a lot of those things, right? Because that's not my motivation. I am working for one person. I got one boss. Right? And so I think that's very important. And so for me as a leader, I'm always thinking, okay, how are we being first? Because of our being, if our identity is in, then that really shapes and forms how we show up in the world, what we actually do. That's critically important. But the other thing from a perspective of grief, Natasha, I think is very important that grief is common to all of us. I think obviously we will all, we have all experienced grief on some level, particularly when you think about death. And we will, right? We will all eventually die. Let's the Lord come back and snatch us, which is very much okay with me as well, right? But most of us will probably transition in a way of death. But the other thing I think we don't talk about enough, and I said this to my husband one time. One of my aunts is sick. She has stage 4 cancer. I know you very much familiar with this, and when we got the news, I was grieving. I was probably 2 months, 3 months last year. Well, I was weepy almost every day. And my husband said to me at one point, he said, "We're not going to grieve as if she's not here anymore." And I said to him, I said, "You're right. I'm not grieving as if she's not here anymore." I said, "I'm grieving the reality that things are not as they should be." Right. And I think that's the thing that we negate sometimes about grief, that we grieve and we lament that the world is not as it should be. And I believe that God grieves the same way, right? God grieves that the world is not as it should be. And so when I have that posture as a leader, then when I see other people showing up in the workspace and they're not performing, right? My first response is not always first to correct or to criticize or critique or to challenge. my first response most of the time is, "Hey, are you okay?" Right? What's going on? Because again, I don't deal with incompetent people. So I'm like, so you would normally show up, you're not showing up. So what's preventing you from showing up in a way that I know you're able and capable of showing up? And then that's a conversation. And then we can talk about, how we are caring for ourselves, right? How we are taking care of our bodies. How are we regulating our nervous systems? What's the state of our emotional health? Whether or not we are taking the time needed to rest. Are we doing things that are life-giving, right? Now we can have those type of conversation because again, this journey in life we're on, the ministry that we do, Natasha, this, like this is long-term marathon type work, right? And we need people healthy. And so if they're not healthy, then they can't continue to do the work long term. And this is how burnout happens, right? Like burnout doesn't happen to people who are living purposefully and taking care of themselves. Burnout happens for people who are either not motivated for the things that they're doing, they're not in the right place, they're not working with the right people, or they're not healthy. And then you get what you get. And then, of course, we know the old adage that hurt people. But I also believe the other side is true that heal people, whole people, cultivate whole people, right? And I think that's what we want to see. And so that's the intentional work that we have to do as leaders.
Oh, so powerful. I want we as you were talking, and especially when you were talking about the rest part and taking care of yourself so you can be able to take care of others, it made me think of the retreats that you're hosting. And, and not only that, I want you to kind of speak to the women who need,
Yeah,
including myself, need these events or
yeah,
these spaces, these retreats who are saying to themselves, I don't have time for it. I want to go, but I really don't have time, but we need it. So I
right,
want to just make space for that because it's on me because I feel like I know I need
right,
to do this for myself. So speak to us,
great, right.
help understand like why tell us about your retreats and then tell us why we should be at them.
Right. So one, thank you so much for the opportunity of that. And I'm glad you the opportunity to not just share about the retreats, but also to speak to the why and the need, right? So full transparency, I was gonna host a Black Women's Leadership Retreat last year. That um I did promote it. I did promote it, but I don't know, to the extent that I would have liked because I became a caretaker last year. So my dad has been pretty sick. And so I didn't have margin to do it, but I did promote it. I did share, people knew about it, but people didn't register. Enough people didn't register, so I canceled it. And so I have right now I'm hosting a 4-part retreat series. The first retreat is happening this weekend. I'm moving forward with that one, but it's very low registration compared to what we were able to do. And so, I will speak to a few things first, and then I'll talk about the retreats themselves. One is that, this definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, right? And one thing about people when we're not well, we just don't make good decisions. I was actually talking to one of my mentees about this last night. I'm saying to her, I'm saying, you giving me an answer about some decisions you've made. I said, you're entitled to make those choices, right? You're grown. I'm not the boss of you and the decisions that you're making, the reasoning behind it does not make sense. It's just not wisdom. It doesn't add up. And I said, and part of the reason you're making decisions that don't make sense, that are not wise, is because you're tired. And the reason you're tired, part of the reason you're tired is because you have not incorporated into your life a rhythm of rest. And the Lord has given you a Sabbath. He says the Sabbath is a gift for you. And you have said, I don't want that gift. So the Sabbath is not a legalistic thing. It's not a thing to do or to say or to hold it over your head and say, why aren't you doing this? It's like the Lord has offered you a beautiful gift. And you were saying, oh, I don't want that. And then you're bearing the consequence of it because here's the thing, every choice we make has a consequence for good or for bad. And so you're actually causing self-harm. So that's an example of what happens when we don't take, we do the same thing over and over. We don't like the results, but we keep doing it. It's almost like an addiction, right? Like this is not good for you. It's not healthy, right? you smoke, it's not good for you. They done told us, right? We know the results of it, but you keep doing it. And it's the exact same thing. It's just a different example of doing the same thing that's just not healthy for us. And so I for me, I have I have somewhat of a prophetic gifting. And so I'm prone to give people what they need, right? But what I find is that people don't always do what's beneficial, right? They don't always take what they need. Like, I write to inform people about what they need. I speak to tell people about what they need, right? Because I that's my love to people, right? I'm like, if I have the wisdom in that area, and I can share it, then I'm gonna be generous and hospitable in sharing it. Now, I'm not controllable with how you respond to that. So that being said is the retreat that the first retreat series I'm hosting is called the Way Retreat. And the way, we'll first call, you said I don't want to use this word Christianity anymore. Believers in the New Testament were first called followers of the way, which means that there was a certain way that they were showing up in the world that was different than how other people were showing up in the world. And it was a marker for them. And so people start to call them followers of the way before they start calling them Christian. And so, when I thought about that, I'm thinking about as I read through, we see some of these examples in Luke, but certainly in Mark, where Jesus is intentionally drawn away to rest. You will see he's going out somewhere to pray. He's going out somewhere to be alone. Large crowds are following him. They got to go find him because he's already drawn away. And sometimes he draws away alone by himself. Sometimes he draws away with a few of his friends, like he's in the Garden of Gethsemane. He brings a few of his friends with him. Sometimes he draws away with his disciples. He's teaching them, just the disciples away, as the crowds are coming or going. And so Jesus has a regular practice and rhythm of this. It's a spiritual rhythm of this. And if Jesus, the God man, needed to do that, right? What make us think we're gonna sustain this work? Because this work is hard and the life is hard, sis. What make
Yes.
us think we're gonna be able to do this without having those regular rhythms in and of ourselves, right? And so I'm just trying to encourage people to cultivate the spiritual disciplines and rhythms that they need to sustain us on the journey. And if you don't have a discipline of it, if you don't have a habit of it, I'm offering a space for you to cultivate that. So then you could take that and maybe share it with your community, right? So that everybody can be healthier and whole. Offer it. That four-part retreat series. The first one this weekend, so you're missing that one, but there's other ones coming. It's there once a quarter. You can sign up for one, you can sign up for more than one. I've been very intentional. I had diverse representation of Christendom, but also this one I'm hosting this weekend is a Saint Thea Bowman. So she's a Black woman Catholic saint. And so that's the work I'm focusing on this time. Next time it'll be Marlena Graves. She Doctor, put some respect, Dr. Marlena Graves, the dear friend. But she's a Latina pastor and professor. And so we're doing her book next time. Then we're going into Howard Thurman and Henry Nowling. And so all these people work have impacted me very deep ways. And so I want to encourage people to get spiritual guidance and direction and wisdom. So people that are anchored in the word, focus on Jesus, and different perspectives on how we engage that. So that's the way. And then I'm also hosting 2 Black women leadership retreat and one in the fall in October and one in December. All of them are both up my website for registration and information right now.
Oh, such beautiful work and such beautiful offerings to us. And so I'm gonna have all the information in the transcript, and at the end of the podcast we'll go, or at the end of this episode, go into where we can find you and all the resources, because this is what is needed to
Yeah,
be able to fill ourselves up, because we empty ourselves in the work,
yeah.
and there's no way that we can, as they say, do this work from an empty cup. So I so appreciate you and what you're doing in that area. So powerful. Hey, um, so again, so along the work that you're doing, you focus on empowering others to step into their kingdom purpose. How
Mhm.
can leaders, especially within the church, create safe spaces for
Mhm.
grief and lament? And how do these practices contribute to growth in the kingdom?
Yeah, I think it's been a challenge, not for me per se, because grief has just been so close. So it's more natural for me. because I feel in my adult life, I've had more experience with grief than without. So, so it's just very close to me, but I know that's not the norm. And what I found, especially when dealing with young people, they feel that the church is not equipped to help them through difficulty, through suffering, through grief, lament, that someone's always giving them a platitude. I think about I read Kate, I can't remember Kate's Bowen, I think I'm pronouncing her name, but she wrote the book, Cancer Survivor. She wrote the book, Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lives I've Loved, right? But they apply it to like everything happens for a reason. Like, well, not really. Sometimes it's just sin and it's not great. And so instead of trying to offer people a platitude, we could just offer people the gift of your presence, right? You can offer people prayers. You can offer people, I mean, you got this, or just sit with me, right? Just be with people is a gift. It is a gift. Giving people the gift of your time, giving people the gift of your hospitality, right? Just making the load a little easier, offering a meal. I think about there's so many times, friends have just I'll check the mail and there's a flower in the mail, there's a card in the mail, there's a Venmo, there's a donation, or like, go take yourself to the spa, right? These are gifts to people. And I think, we want to have I think a more regular practice of just being attentive, to how people checking in with folks. Like I tell people all the time, I think honestly, Natasha, I think we've gotten too lazy, right? We have this way of being more technologically connected, or engaged, but not connected. Like, we're not connected. All the research is saying we are more lonely and isolated generation than ever. And so the fact that we have this device, and we're doing the expedient thing. So what I would say, the expedient thing may be a text, because I'm texting because I don't really want to talk to you. And I'm like, well, if you don't really want to talk to me, then we don't really have a relationship, right? We have a transaction. And so I think we have to understand, like, what are we doing here? So I think, we really have to get people to understand and cultivate rhythms of being communal again, of actually connecting in a very intimate way, of giving people the gift of our presence, which also gives of time, and to feel very much okay to say, I don't know. I don't understand. I don't have the answers. And come let us, right? And so if I don't have, I can put you some resources. I can help you with, I could come alongside. That's if you choose that, right? You have agency to do that. But I also just think that inside the church, we have to speak better about what we don't understand. And there are things that the Bible shares with us where we can see things happening that we can talk to that about, being a mental health thing, but we didn't have a language for it, right? But we see stuff happening. Like, you know, um, there's a lot of ways that some of these disciples, I mean, some of these people depressed, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, some of these people is anxious. Like, Paul wouldn't write about don't be anxious if he or the people in the church was experiencing anxiety, right? He's giving them tools because there's clearly anxiety, at work. And so I don't think we need to pretend. I think we have this facade that if you're a Christian and you love Jesus, then you won't have these mental health. And it's like we speak about it as a taboo thing, but it's like if any other physical ailment in your body, you go get help for it. And your mind is no different. It's an organ, it's a muscle that have to be cared for and nurtured and exercised, in the same way that other parts of our body need to do. And when those things are not working as they should, we get help. We go to the doctor, we go to physical therapy, right? And so I think we just have to get better about speaking about those things across um breaking down what we consider to be spiritual and secular division, and how we care about our whole person, because God cares about our whole person.
Yes, was so much. I love what kind of is has been threaded through this conversation. Communal,
Mhm,
like you've been bringing that word up. Talk about that as it relates to Black woman grief.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So this is one, not the only, but I think this is one unique thing about Black women leadership. I really do, right? And well, we are and have always been a communal people. And so I think that is a gift to us. And it's a gift to the world, right? Because when Black women get together, we champion movements, we save democracy,
Mm,
we educate communities, we build family, we build schools, right? We build infrastructure. That's what Black women do, and we done that before we came to this country. Right? If you've ever been to the continent of Africa, that's what we do. Like it's the Black women. They out in the field. They gardening. They bringing the water bottles. Like it's listen. This is not new to us. We true to this, and so I think it's a thing that we uniquely do. And I will add this because I actually just came from a retreat with Black women, which means that when we don't do it well, it's all the more harmful. And, um, and there are times when we have not been our sister's keeper. We have not been the person who lift up the arms of our sister when she's weak or offering that shoulder to cry on. Or let's be real, we have not always been the mentor or sponsor, right? Like we're just glad for our seat at the table. And so we don't want to share, like we don't want to create space. We don't want to open doors for other people. And I feel sorry for those types of women. It's a horrible, lonely existence to be in, right? But as for me and myself, it I I like working hard, and I like working hard with things that's gonna matter, that's gonna have eternal reward, and for people who want to do that hard work, good work with me. That's
mhm.
how I like to live in this world. And so when I mentor people, I'm encouraging, shepherding, and coaching them to model create the culture. I said, as a leader, I wrote about this in my books, Sojourner's Truth. As leaders, we have a responsibility to create the type of community and cultures that we want. Right. And so I think in the same way we can learn bad behavior and bad habits and bad practices, we can also learn good behavior and good practices. And that's what I try to cultivate, when I'm dealing with young people.
Yes, look, and so speaking of that, because I have
Yeah.
plug. So this quote, because it kind of goes, well, it does go directly along with what you're saying. So this is building for a new kingdom. It says offering mentorship and sponsorship are two ways we can exercise our redemptive influence to cultivate learning communities that facilitate the shared values of kingdom citizenship. And that's so powerful. That's what you were just saying. So I was like, I got the book right here. And she just said,
Yeah.
what?
I, girl, yeah, I research and write my own stuff. I believe that. I wrote all of that. Dang.
So powerful. It's so powerful.
Amen.
Oh my. Let me do this question and then we'll kind of wrap it up and bring it to a close. It says, in the context of kingdom work, mentorship often involves offering both guidance and emotional support. So, how can mentors and sponsors, leaders, help individuals progress grief in a way that strengthens their faith, but also allows them to grow in their purpose?
Yeah, so I think a certain level of vulnerability, right? Just because I think sometimes, especially when we think about mentorship and sponsorship, that's normally for someone who's younger and not further along on the journey. And I think it's very easy for them if they look up to you, right? They wouldn't accept you as a mentor or sponsor if they didn't look up to you. And they can look at you where you are now and they can think that, oh my gosh, uh, she's so dynamic and I want to be like that. And then they don't see Natasha. They don't see how much you've done or how much you've gone through to get to where you are today. They don't see how much you've suffered, right? And so I think being vulnerable about those things and not be the one, walking around as if you have it all together, you've never done anything and, come and look at me and be like me and setting yourself up on a pedestal for people. I think is more powerful. I mean, I just tell you, like last year, like girl, last year was a lot. And I remember, there was one night I went to, I got all these diagnoses from my dad that were bad. And I was not well. Like I was just emotionally not well. And it was the week I had mentoring with my young women in the nonprofit. And I remember this was midweek and I met with them and, they of course, they've been praying, and so they asked, "How's your dad?" And I told them I gave the report for the day, and it was not good. And, I saw, like, the countenance, and we was on virtual, so I saw the countenance of everybody's face change and everything, and I said to them, I said, "Listen," I said, "This not my first rodeo. Like, God has been faithful, and God is faithful, and God will carry us through this the same way he did last time." Now, I don't know what the end result is gonna be, but that I am sure, right? But then I also said to them, it's like, "Listen, I'm here with you in spite of the day and week I had because I wanna be. And it gives me great joy to be with you. And you were what I was looking forward to this week. I knew there was a potential I was gonna have a lot of bad news, but you were the light I was looking forward to this week because I have a purpose of being here with you, and we are a blessing to each other." Right? There's you in a good mentor relationship. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. It's a blessing to each other. So I get great joy out of serving them in that way, and so was able to set it there. And then then everyone continents kind of change. It's like, look, we got work to do here, right? And that's what I'm going to focus on. And when I get done with that, I'm going to go back and focus on the next thing that the Lord has for me to do, right? And so I think that's very important. So for them to have, I remember I just said to them that time. I said, I know, like, sometimes, I'm not as responsive as I wanna be, like, I always respond, but not always in a timely manner. I'm like, "Look, know this, I am doing the best that I can, and if I don't get you something, it's because I can't, right? And I remember I said to him, I said, "I would love to be better for you, but right now, this is the best I could do. This is the best I could do." Right? And so that level of vulnerability for them to say, like, "Look, I don't always have it together." Right? And I can go on pretending and, tap dancing, and I could be up to 3 o'clock in the morning trying to do it, but I'm not gonna do that because then I wouldn't have made it through the year. Right. Right? So it's like, I'm gonna get to it as soon as I can because I have to prioritize every day, what I'm doing. So I think that level of vulnerability, that level of honesty, that level of transparency is all critically important because it teaches them also and provides safety for them to show up in the same way, right? For them to use their words to communicate what they need, to communicate when they don't have the capacity, when it's too much, when they're gonna miss the mark, so they can correct themselves, right? And if they don't see that model, that they're not able to talk about that with someone, then when they start dropping balls because of grief or because of suffering or because they're not mentally well, then what the enemy does too, Natasha, we don't talk about this enough. The enemy would then come and accuse, and then they start to believe they're a failure. They start to believe they're not good enough. It's like, no, there's no suffering happening to you that's not common to humankind, right? And also, but we're always pointing people back to Jesus. Like, we do not have a high priest that's not acquainted with our suffering, sis. And we have a high priest that has suffered in the same way that we are and do, yet was without sin. And therefore, we can approach his throne of grace to receive mercy in our time of need, right? So always pointing them back to Jesus, like Jesus not judging you because you human.
Right.
Now, I'm not talking about you out here willfully sinning, but I'm saying that you're weak. You're weak. The word says that my strength is made perfect in your weakness. And that too is a leadership lesson.
Wow. What you're teaching and what you're mentoring, what you are cultivating in this group that you're leading or the leaders, because you also pass this to leaders, meaning
I do.
adults.
I do. I do coaching. I do leadership executive coaching. Yeah.
Right. So it's so multifaceted because you're reaching such a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um, But everything that you're saying is so important. I'm thinking about the younger ones, and I say the younger ones, young adults and younger who, I mean, the things that you're teaching them, this is like stuff that we don't be learning until we're like 30, 40, 50. So, well, it's impactful and powerful. And again, just want to say thank you so much for your work. So I want to kind of bring it to a close again, just be able to honor your time. But this has been so powerful.
Yeah.
Before we end, can you leave the listeners with some words of encouragement?
Oh, Lord help us. So I will say, right now, like I said, I don't know when you're gonna release this, but right now there's a lot of shifting happening in the land. And what I will say is that we need to be a prayerful people. We need to be people who are wise, meaning that we are able to know and love the truth. We're able to hear the Lord's voice. And then we are bold and courageous to respond in obedience, what thus says Lord. Um, we're gonna have to do that. And I want to say if people are not in community where they are being strengthened, prepared, trained to do that important theological, historical, relational, social work, then we need to find those communities quickly and we need to lead into them. And that may be a virtual community, that may be a local church, that may be a civic group or organization. But trust me when I say we're going to need to be more disciplined, more wise, more communal than ever, probably in our generation. Um, MLK says that freedom must be won in every generation. And so now it's our turn.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sitting with me.
That's it.
That's that powerful. Uh, Please tell our listeners again how they can connect with you,
Yeah,
how they
yeah.
can find your books, resources, how they can sign up for
Mm.
all the things.
Yes, yes, yes. So I do leadership development and Christian spiritual formation. That's what I do. And so there are various ways in which I do that. So with my writing and speaking, you can find me on my speaker website, which is natashasrobinson.com. And so you can find all my books there. You can find out how to book me for a speaking engagement there. You can find out about all the retreats and register for all the retreats there. So that's natashasrobinson.com. If you want to support our nonprofit work, it's Leadership Links. That's the name of the organization. So it's Leadership Links, LINKS Inc. INC.org. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. We are looking for people to become recurring donors. That's very important because it is a Black woman-led organization. And inequity means that we don't often get the support financially that other organizations get. But also, if you're interested in joining our mentoring team, we actually just launched our new training curriculum. And so you can go to that website and register to become a mentor with us. And if you're interested in that, we can get you started on our training program. And so if anything that I said resonated with you, you're looking for a great community, you want to invest in Black girls and young women, I invite you to come, consider becoming a mentor with us, starting that from. And then lastly, for my business, I do leadership executive coaching and consulting. And so my business is T3 Leadership Solutions. And so if you are interested in that type of work, you can go there, t3leadershipsolutions.com. And all of my consulting and coaching work is there. I write regularly. I think you're subscribing to my newsletter on Natasha. And so the Substack newsletters, you can find it on my speaking page as well. And so those are all the ways you can connect with me online. All the social media stuff is on my speaking website as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. This has been so powerful and can't wait for the listeners to hear.
I can't wait.
Thank you,
Your
Doc.
book, I'm waiting for it to come. I mean, quiet about it. I know it's so extremely important. I'm so grateful for you and your witness and how you've taken these ashes and made beauty out of it. And I just, pray for the Lord to keep you in that and look forward to a continued partnership in the gospel and growing friendship. So thank you. Thank you.